In this video, we'll show you how to create your first FMEA and introduce the basic editing functions that you'll use most often. From the documents catalog, you can select New FMEA to create a new FMEA. The header screen opens up, and here we can make a choice, whether this will be a design FMEA or a process FMEA. For this example, I will be creating a process FMEA. I can simply enter information in the header string, but for process responsibility prepared by and core team, we can only use a drop-down list of users that are actually in the system. So you can searching for my own name, for example. This goes for the responsibility prepared by and the core team. In the core team, we can have an option to use user groups to quickly create a core team. If I select my example group here, I can very quickly create a core team based on that group. I click Save, core team is added to the header information. We see here that it says template type. Now, by default, you're working in a specific template. For me, I'm working by default in the AIG VDA Form C. However, if I need to create an FMEA in a different template, here I can select a different one. So if I want to create an FMEA in the AIG 4th edition template, for example, I select the base template. For this training video, I will be using an AIG VDA Form C template, however. In the bottom right corner, there's a Save button. So if I click this, the items need to be unique. So let me add a B to that. If I save in the bottom right corner, the new FMEA will be created. Your new FMEA opens up as an empty worksheet. We can begin by entering information for the process item system. We can create the cell by double-clicking underneath the header. You notice that the background color of this cell is now a different color than the rest of the form, indicating that a cell has been activated here. If I double-click it, a pop-up will open up, and here I can enter the actual information. If I click Save, the information is committed to the cell. If I'm just working in a straight line to the right, I can simply double-click again to create a cell and then double-click it again to open up the pop-up where I can enter the actual information. If I click Save again, the text will be committed to the cell. If I move on to the next one, the process work element for M type, again, simply type my text and click Save. Now, it's possible, of course, that we have multiple work elements. When we branch out, we need to use the ribbon in the top here to create new cells that still belong to the same step in this case. So if I want to create another process work element, I click the Add New Process Work Element button here in the ribbon, and that will create a new cell underneath whatever I had selected. When we're convinced that these are the work elements that we need for now, we can move on to the function. Note that this function cell is linked to the process item. So let's just add some text in here. In this case, let's go for an assembly. The shaft to the pole housing assembly. And again, I click Save to commit my text. Now, if I'm building still to the right, I can simply double click and these cells will be opened again. I enter some information and click save, it's committed to the cell. But now we've reached the function of the process step and product characteristic, which is a somewhat special cell because there's more information here. So when I double click it, we'll see that we have three different parts here to this cell. We have the function of the process step, the product characteristics, and if we want, we can also already enter a specification in here. So let's say that function here is the present-centered bearing to achieve axial position in pole housing. Let's say there's a max gap per print, and let's call it a max gap of 10. It's just an example. If I click save, again, this information is committed into the cell, but what we'll see here is that the different parts of this cell are divided by a slash symbol. So the present-centered bearing to achieve axial position in the pole housing is the function of the process step. Then we get a slash. So we get to the next part, which is the product characteristic, max gap per print. And then we have another slash. And after that, we get the final bit of information, the specification and tolerance. The next cell, the function of the process work element and process characteristic, is similar to the previous one in the sense that we have multiple areas to fill out information. But this is a little bit more special because we can link the function of the process work element to the work element that we created in the for M type column. So we can see here that there's a drop-down menu, which is created based on whatever we filled out within this step for the process work elements. Right now we have two options. If I add a third, again using the ribbon, let's say we want to add a method and save. We open up the function of the process work element again. We now have three options here to choose. So within a step, this drop-down menu is created. Then we have the function of the process work element. So let's say the operator needs to press the button machine for releasing the press in process. When loading is completed, then process characteristic would be, let's say, press the button, well, it's basically the same. Let's be a little bit lazy and copy that information by using Control-C and Control-V. I can copy only part of the, can copy whatever I want if I've opened up the cell. So if I select this part and use Control-C and use Control-V here, I'm simply copying the text using Windows functionality. Let's just call this an example of specification. And what we may notice here is that there's an option to enter a characteristics number in the button. That's the same thing as the requirement ID for the function of the process step and is used for the linkage to our control plan. So I'm using a following number of the product characteristic in this cell. And you can see again the same thing. There's a slash indicating the different parts of the cell. In this case, the man is the work element for M type, then we get a slash and we get the actual function of the process work element. We get a slash and then we get the process characteristic. And then we have another slash and then we have the specification and tolerance. If we want to add multiple characteristics, we can use again the button to create a new function of the process step. And again, we can build this line from left to right. If we want to move on to the effects column, we need to open up the failure mode first, because the failure mode has to come first in the analysis, of course. As soon as we've created this cell by double-clicking it, so we can see that the background color is different, now we can double-click the effect cell and it will open up. So let's just add a failure mode, actual position, censored there, that's reached. And again, click Save to commit it. Have an effect. Say that the clearance is too small to assemble shaft. And this way we simply keep filling out the form from left to right. And let's also enter a cause and machine stops for reaching actual position. And save again to commit the information into the database. When we get to the prevention and detection controls, if I open these cells up, they look slightly different. I use the plus button here to add a prevention or detection. And when I've entered anything, I can link that to the product or process characteristic. And again, this is important later for the link to the control plan. So if I save this, we'll just have the text none. I'll move on to the current detection. Again, I use the plus button to create the cell here to enter data. Let's say we have a lot release protocol objective with an effectivity 100%, being very optimistic. Let's say that's linked to the product characteristic. But let's say we have multiple detections. We add them in the same cell because they're still belonging to everything in this branch. So if I want to add another detection control, I click the plus button again, and I create another one. So say 100% check motor performance. Oh. And let's save that, and it will be added here in the same cell. So this way, we follow the standard AIG VDA workflow, and we ensure the relationships are all created automatically. Adding information, as we've seen, is pretty straightforward. We create new branches by using the buttons, and the buttons will change depending on what cell I have selected. So if I have a 4M type selected, I can create another 4M type, but I cannot create a requirement. If I want to create another function of the process step and product characteristic, I need to select that cell and then use the button. Whenever I use the button in the ribbon to create a new cell, it will be created underneath whatever cell I have selected. So if I've if I have a 4M type and I want to put that here in between man and machine, I simply select man, and now a new cell is created in between. Copying can be done by simply selecting the text in the cell and using Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V. But it's also possible to copy entire branches. If I copy, copying branches means everything that belongs to that step or to that requirement or to that failure mode. In most cases, if I select something and want to copy that cell, I'm going to take everything on the right side of it. But of course, for the failure modes, the effect also belongs to that. So that cell would also be copied over. So to demonstrate, if I copy cell using the ribbon here, and I select my first process step, and then let's say we want to put it at the end here, we paste cell. We can see that everything belonging to that step on the right side is copied over as well. If I were to copy over a failure mode, use copy cell, and let's just paste it directly underneath. It will copy the effect as well and the information on the right side. So these branches are also used in copying. So if I only want to copy the text, I need to open up the cell and select the information, and then I can use Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V on my keyboard to copy and paste information. The severity, occurrence, and detection ratings can be chosen from predefined tables. So if I double click severity, this screen will open up. And here I can select whatever rank is necessary here and click save to commit that information to the cell. Now it is possible that you need to use a different set of ranking criteria. By default, I'm using the AIG VDA set, but if I am showing my FMEA to a specific customer and they want to see the AIG 4th edition, for example, I can simply switch criteria sets within documents by going to choose ranking criteria and then selecting the set. If I select my internal set and open up severity again, you will see that the information here is completely changed. We're now looking at the AIG 4th edition. Let me change this back to AIG VDA. So the same goes for occurrence and detection. So if I open up occurrence now, we'll open up the AIG VDA. And let's enter a detection the same way. Now, action priority and RPN are automatically calculated. If I double click my action priority, it will open up the justification table. Now, this table is just an exact copy from the AIG VDA manual. And if I scroll down here a little bit, highlighted, we will see how we got to this action priority high. If we have an action priority high, of course, we should enter actions. Now, when we need improvement actions, we can open up the cell again by double clicking. Let's just call this preventive example. Then we can also do a detection action. Then in the responsibility target completion date, we have a combined cell again. In the responsibility, we choose people from the list, so only users that have an account in the software. And if we click the calendar, we can select a date when this action should be finished. For each action and each preventive and detection action, we make someone responsible. The responsible, if there's someone responsible and there are actions in the action cells, these actions are automatically taken into the Open Actions report as soon as the document is saved. They will remain in the Open Actions report until we go into the actions taken and completion date cell to enter any text and check the box for complete. As soon as I save this cell, so with information in the action taken cell, checking the box for complete, and it will automatically go to the date of today. However, if I finished this yesterday, I can simply change that. If I save this, then the action will be considered done for the Open Actions report. and will be taken out of the Open Actions report. When actions are taken, of course, we need to enter the new severity. Well, severity should stay the same, but occurrence and detection values and action priority and RPN will again automatically be calculated. So creating an FMEA in the software is intended to be very intuitive. When we start and build a line from left to right, in most cases, we can simply double click underneath the headers to keep building our branch. If we need to branch out, have multiple product characteristics, for example, we select the relevant cell and use the ribbon to add a new function of the process step, for example. So you can build your analysis from left to right, use predefined tables to quickly create a consistent AIAG VDA compliant FMEA, while Datalyzer manages the relationships and the calculations in the background.
The video shows how to create a process FMEA. Enter detailed information, assign responsibilities, and use predefined tables for consistent automated analysis with Datalyzer.